Hi, good evening everyone. This is Group 9 and we are going to present our research on the implementation of biometric technology in the banking industry to restrict physical and logical access. As outlined here, our presentation is divided into sections including introduction, overview of security threats faced by the bank, role of biometrics in banking industry, underlying technology, implementation strategy, application benefits, future trends, and finally the conclusion. So starting off with our business problem statement, it states that with the inflation of cybersecurity attacks, Citywise's bank is experiencing stagnation in terms of globalization and growth, and the current cybersecurity initiatives seem inadequate to meet the organization's security concerns. Increased digitalization in the banking industry to carry out various day-to-day tasks, including money transactions, e-banking, ATM, credit card, etc., have given rise to cybersecurity attacks. As all the business transactions have moved online, any minor weakness in the banking could lead to huge losses to the bank and eventually the customers. So banking is indispensable about trust. Customers trust the banks with their savings and transactions. The main priority of the bank is to provide a safe environment to their customers. Any loss of confidentiality and integrity of customer services is a serious matter and can result in loss of customer relationships. Therefore, banks need to build strong access control policies focusing on accountability, confidentiality, availability, and integrity of data and its resources. So this research study seeks to identify and evaluate threats and issues in banks' current security strategies and implement the use of biometric technology, such as fingerprint and iris scan for authentication to restrict physical and logical access to improve banks' current security strategy. Access control, as you all might already know, is a security technique controlling who or what can view and use the resources and is considered as the fundamental component of security compliance programs that ensures security technology and access control policies are in place. There are two types of access control, physical and logical. Physical access control limits the physical access to a building, company, or data center. Logical access control limits access to digital systems, including computer networks, files, and data storage and servers. So when you plan to keep information secure, you naturally begin to consider limiting access to the information and the resources. In fact, you can keep information secure if you just eliminate all access. However, the information system itself would be considered not functional in this case. Instead, you need to allow the proper people the appropriate level of access according to what their role or responsibilities are and deny anyone else. There are five basic components of access control systems very useful in designing, implementing, and maintaining a secure information system. Identification is what happens when a user claims an identity, and this process starts for authentication, authorization, and accountability. This can be done by providing a username. Authentication is making sure the claimed identity is valid and the user really who they claim to be. This can be done by providing a password, PIN, or a biometric. Authorization refers to established rules that determine whether a user has privileges sufficient to allow them to do some action with regard to a file, data, or a report. Auditing is monitoring a user's activity while in the system programmatically and recording that activity in an audit log. Security cannot be enforced unless accountability is maintained. Users must be held accountable for detrimental and unauthorized use of the system. According to a recent research by BAE Intelligence, around 75% of banks have experienced a rise in security attacks since the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic. These may be due to various hardware or software related vulnerabilities and loopholes leading to exploitation by cybercriminals. So let's discuss about the most important logical and physical security issues faced by the banks. Not surprisingly, the banking industry is one of the top target of hackers using phishing attacks to breach security. And while safety and protocols are built into both internal and consumer facing banking websites and applications, it is often the human element that fails to detect the scam, resulting in theft. Phishing attacks involves redirecting users to a phony banking website or a page created to steal credentials. A data breach exposes confidential, sensitive, or protected information to an unauthorized person. The most common causes of data breach include Weakened stolen credentials, backdoor application, and patched vulnerabilities, too many permissions, and improper configuration of banking security systems. Various mobile malware and malicious third-party applications are also designed to steal confidential information. The most famous DDoS attack affects the availability and continuity of banking systems, which involves thousands of bots to send infinite requests to banking server to overwhelm the server memory and unauthorized requests and cause the real request to time out. Brute force is another such attack where the attacker gains username and runs all possible password combinations. Cross-site scripting involves putting off malicious content on a legitimate banking website. Wi-Fi being mostly available in all the public places such as restaurants, shopping malls, airport, etc., where a hacker can create his own access point and masquerade as a legitimate one to steal confidential information such as credit card details and login passwords. The physical access threats to banks include unauthorized access to restricted areas such as data centers and bank reserves, unauthorized transactions to ATMs, and insider threats from the employees. This was all from my side. Next part of the presentation will be taken care of by other group members. Thank you.
Thank you, Gursimran. My name is Kirti, and I'll be covering role, underlying, and implementation of biometrics in banking industry. Coming to the role of biometrics in banking sector, we see that most of the conventional methods mostly tied up using credentials, authorization, comprising username and passwords, and mostly we use the two-mode authorization, including these two, the passwords and the ATM pins. Our motive of the presentation is to replace the idea of 2FA credential authorization to 2FA or multi-factor biometric authorization. Therefore, in futuristic approach of biometrics in banking stream, password are pinless and or cardless environment, which are the modes of contactless payments. With adoption to the biometric cards, the payment will be contactless, seamless, and will be enabled in more secure environment, also increasing the user experience, resulting in more higher in its marketing end. As it has liveness detection, it is difficult to steal, hence enhancing the security. Also, it has a better accuracy with false acceptance and false rejection rate. Also includes including the face, finger, and voice recognition, and also combining these three. It also promotes integration as device-centric data does not leave the device. Coming to the next slide, underlying technology. The current technology of biometrics in banking sector that we are using are the cash transactions, banking in ATMs, through mobile banking and home banking. Coming to the cash transactions, presently most of the banks ask the customer to carry debit or checks to withdraw or deposit the cash. We propose banks which can instill biometrics such as facial IDs and fingerprints that can be used to authenticate the user for cash transactions and making it easier for the bank employees. Coming to the banking in ATMs, as most of the people use ATMs for cash withdrawal, deposits, etc., we propose to install biometric systems in ATMs. These biometric systems can be used as 2FA after the user authenticates himself via debit and PIN. Therefore, this system improves the overall security of the ATMs. The mobile banking. In mobile applications, we propose that biometrics be used as a 2FA or authorization transactions, and the biometrics can be used as more user-friendly to authenticate people rather than using conventional methods. So all the user have to do is sign up for the application. They need to provide username and password and the other details for subsequent logins that the user will be making. And coming to the home banking, in a similar way to the mobile banking, when users ask for an online banking services via PC or laptop, biometrics can be used as 2FA for transaction authorization. Presently, most of the banks use SMS banking OTP as 2FA, which is not so user friendly, as users need to wait for the SMS to arrive to their phone devices. and then manually enter this code. If biometrics such as fingerprint is used as a 2FA, this makes it a lot faster and easier than the prevailing 2FA methods. Coming to the biometrics implementation strategy, in response to the committee report, the operational factors can be recognized through certain stages as enrollment phase. Any new user should be enrolled for to create their account with their unique details, which are biometric details inside it. Users giving their biometric samples like fingerprint, face, and iris data. This data will be stored and verification will be done, and users will be given access to their account through these samples. And the next phase is extraction and storage phase. These captured sample data are pre-processed and then filed into reference format. When the biometric data captured is different from the data displayed in the database, only then the sample input will be stored in the reference data unit. The third and final phase is the matching phase. Similar to the extraction phase, the authentication phase, the matching phase processes the matching of data input, but if the person sample does not match with the pre-stored data in the biometric database or the reference database, then the application simply rejects the authentication of that person and then rejects their false identity. It also allows access to the particular users when the data is matched with the database. Today's biometric technology can safely secure and store the biometric data instead of centralized servers doing that, and that is clearly a game changer. From here, Preeti will be continuing. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Preeti. Hello, everyone. My name is Preeti, and I will continue with the next topic for discussion. Most commonly used biometric techniques all over the world are fingerprinting and face recognition. However, iris and retina scan recognition biometrics are feebly used in mobile interface application along with face recognition. Some banking services include a combination of such biometric entry points to access the authorization. Hence, these are most widely called multi-factor biometrics. These biometrics already have a huge success rate. Now the biometric technology is drifting into path towards a biometric payment cards, more like advanced on-card fingerprinting sensing cards. I would like to start with the area of biometric technology application in our use case. First area is ATM transactions. Implementation of biometric-based fingerprint authentication (ATM) results in increased security, wherein the burden of remembering PIN password is reduced on the end user. This replaces the traditional PIN password-based authentication vulnerable to a wide range of cybersecurity threats. Here we propose to use a fingerprint scanner on a machine which will scan the print and match it with the database available, maybe in cloud or on premises. Second area is mobile banking and online banking application. Access to mobile-based internet banking and online banking application can be restricted by biometric fingerprinting based authentication on devices. Each time the end user choose and open the application on the mobile phone, they are requested to authenticate themselves before accessing the application. Transaction can be done at any time and any day, making it convenient for customers. In order to complete it, all user needs to be enrolled on fingerprint infrastructure and all new and old customer needs to be informed on mobile banking features. Last area of application we will discuss is physical infrastructure. Implementation of this technology at every entry point of physical infrastructure restricts access to physical infrastructure to authorized users only. For example, those to specific areas like staff computers should be restricted and only accessed by authorized personnel, whereas lobby where customers will be allowed should not have such restrictions. Furthermore, more sensitive areas such as data center, money vault, or locker rooms that contain sensitive data and storage of money and possession can be secured by multi-factor authentication biometrics such as fingerprint and iris of limited staff members. Next, we are going to discuss some of the benefits of implementing such technology. Secure online transaction. Online transactions can be secured by implementing fingerprint-based authentication as a password or multi-factor authentication. Various attacks such as phishing, brute force, shoulder surfing can be mitigated where end users are requested to identify themselves before submitting the transaction request. For example, replacing PIN-based authentication in ATMs with biometric authentication. Digital onboarding. The identity of new or existing end user can be established digitally by incorporating fingerprint authentication in the existing process. The same can be incorporated while onboarding the new customers. The time required to onboard customer is reduced. The third point is increased customer base. Increased security results in increased overall organization security and increased trust among end users using services such as implementation of this technology reduces the burden on end user to remember PIN and password. Last point is no spoofing. The replication of biometric characteristic is nearly impossible. The use of biometric authentication removes the cybersecurity threat related to spoofing. That concludes my part. Thank you.
A risk associated with biometric technology. First is a biometric spoofing. In this, attacker tries to spoof an identity of an user and try to gain an access to the system. Second, data breach of storing personal medical record. Introduction of the biometric technology has introduced a risk associated with storing the data. The third one is storage and the encryption. Storing of biometric data has introduced a risk associated with the privacy, which ensures that the user's data must be encrypted at data at rest. Future trends. As biometric has gained popularity over the years, one of the surveys conducted by Spicework in the year 2018 showed that 62% of a participant organization were already using biometric based authentication. The rest 24% of the organizations were with the roadmap of implementing the biometric technology in the upcoming 2 years. This evolving biometric technology has evolved few other technologies. One of them is a gate-based technology. In this, the user is authenticated based on his walking style. The second one is a vein-based technology. In this, the hand of the user is used to measure the unique patterns of the blood vessels, and based on that, the user is authenticated. Last slide for the today's presentation conclusion. Security posture of an applications are improved by implementing biometric technology as an authentication. While implementing the biometric technology, the accuracy of the biometric based authentication must be considered. The increased popularity within biometric based authentication will soon replace the traditional based authentication. Usage of biometric based authentication has introduced the aspect of privacy which should be considered while storing the data throughout the application. That's it from our side. We are open for any questions.